It was on a Wednesday, the middle of the week, middle of the month, and middle of one of those arguments you can't even remember how they started. I wasn't looking for anything when I noticed the faint, greasy red smear on the inside of his collar. It wasn't even our fight that made me look. I was folding the laundry, distracted, and I pulled out one of his shirts that I knew damn well hadn't been worn in over a week, but there it was, a fresh mark, recent enough that it hadn't been through the wash. I stared at it like it would morph into something else if I waited long enough. But it didn't. It just sat there, staring back, mocking me. At first, I did the dumbest thing. I made excuses for him. I told myself maybe it was mine, even though I hadn't worn lipstick in weeks, and never that color. Maybe it was his coworker's wife giving him a hug at a party. Maybe it was just some weird stain from a napkin. I knew it wasn't. But you'd be shocked at the kind of lies you'll tell yourself when you want your world to stay still. Later that night, I tried to catch him in it without catching him in it. You ever done that? Ask questions like you're doing a crossword puzzle, pretending not to already have the answer. He was on his phone when I asked if he saw Angela from his office recently, the one with the red hair and nails that always looked sharp enough to stab someone. He didn't flinch. Just kept scrolling. Didn't even glance at me, said, "Nah, not since last Friday's meeting." Why? Like it was the most casual thing in the world. That's when I knew. He wasn't hiding it badly. He just didn't care if I saw it anymore. I stayed up that night watching him sleep. I lay next to him, studying the side of his face, the little wrinkle between his eyes he always got when he dreamed something stressful. I used to love that wrinkle. It made him human. That night it made me want to scream. I thought about waking him up, throwing the shirt in his face, demanding the truth, making him explain that lipstick mark to me like a child caught with chocolate on their face. But I didn't. I needed more. So I started watching. Nothing obvious. Just little things, checking his location when he said he was at work, noting how often he left the room when his phone rang, smelling his clothes when he got home. It's insane how fast you become a detective when your heart's on the line. I memorized the patterns of his behavior like it was a second job. And then, 2 days later, he slipped up again. I had a late client meeting, he said, breezing through the front door like it was nothing, not even making eye contact. But his jacket smelled like a hotel lobby. Not a bar. Not a restaurant. That weird mix of industrial air conditioning, cleaning chemicals, and perfume. That night I went through his wallet while he showered. Nothing damning. But tucked behind a folded receipt was a hotel key card. No name. Just a white plastic rectangle with a magnetic strip. I turned it over in my hands like it might confess something. When he came out, I was sitting on the edge of the bed, holding the card in both hands like a priest with a Bible. "What's this?" I asked. He froze. That's all he did. Just froze. "You want to try again with that client meeting story?" I said, and even I was surprised how calm my voice sounded. He opened his mouth, closed it, rubbed the back of his neck like he was about to pitch some bullshit. Then he shrugged. "It's nothing. A friend from work left it in my jacket by mistake." I laughed. Out loud. For the first time in days. "You really think I'm that stupid?" And for a moment, he just stared at me. No denial. No apology. Just silence. That was the moment everything inside me shifted. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just looked at him like I'd never seen him before, and maybe I hadn't. Maybe the man I married never actually existed. I didn't speak to him the next day. Not because I was unsure what to say, but because every time I looked at him, I didn't recognize him anymore. His face, his hands, even the way he poured his coffee like nothing had changed, it all felt fake, like watching a stranger use my kitchen. He was careful, overly so. He started being polite, asking if I needed help with anything, complimenting the dinner he used to barely notice, and avoiding long eye contact. I could see the guilt underneath the surface, but it was like he didn't know what version of himself to play, the defensive husband, the regretful one, or just the guy hoping I'd let it go and forget. I didn't say a word until the following night, when I knew he'd be too relaxed to expect it. We were sitting in the living room, the TV flickering in front of us with some background noise neither of us was watching. I waited until he reached for his beer, then I muted the sound and turned to him. "What's her name?" I asked, not blinking, not flinching, just waiting. He paused, bottle halfway to his mouth, then slowly set it down. "What are you talking about?" "You know what I'm talking about. The woman. The one who left lipstick on your collar. The one you booked a hotel room with. What's her name?" He rubbed his face like I'd asked him to recall a 10-digit code from memory. "It's not what you think," he started, and I held up a hand. I didn't ask for an excuse. I asked for her name. He looked down at the floor like it had answers. Lena, he said finally. Her name's Lena. I didn't react. I just nodded and leaned back on the couch. I expected a flood of emotions, maybe a rush of tears or that wave of anger that makes you shake, but none of it came. I felt empty, which was worse. The silence stretched out between us for a moment too long before I spoke again. How long? He hesitated, then exhaled. A few months. And by a few, you mean what? 3, 5, 9, 6? I nodded again. Is she married? No. Kids? No. So just you screwing around behind your wife's back because you were bored. He looked up at me then, defensive. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like that? I repeated. You booked a hotel, lied to my face, and hid it until I found the key card in your jacket. Explain to me how that isn't exactly like that. He opened his mouth, then shut it. After a moment, he stood up and walked into the kitchen. I followed him. You don't get to walk away when I'm the one who's been cheated on. He turned around sharply. I'm not walking away. I just needed a minute. To do what? Think up a better version of the lie. He slammed his hand on the counter. I told you the truth. No, I said, stepping closer. You told me what you thought would shut me up. There's a difference. He grabbed the back of a chair, his knuckles white. It didn't mean anything. Don't insult me with that garbage. You don't go back to a meaningless thing for 6 months. You don't take it to a hotel. You don't throw away a marriage for nothing. He didn't respond, and I knew why. Because in his mind, the line had already been crossed so many times that my anger barely made a dent. He looked tired, like this was just another fight to get through. That was the moment I lost whatever pity I had left. Did you love her? I asked, voice lower this time. He blinked slowly. No. Did you tell her you did? He didn't answer right away, and that silence told me more than anything he could have said. I laughed, sharp and bitter. So you did. It was just. Don't finish that sentence. You've said enough. I turned around and walked toward the stairs. He followed. So what now? He asked. Are you leaving? I stopped at the foot of the staircase and looked back at him. No, not yet. You don't get to be the only one who makes decisions in this house. What does that mean? It means I'm not done talking. You don't just get to cheat and hope it all blows over. You're going to sit in this every damn day until I decide what I want. His mouth tightened like he was going to argue, but he didn't. He just nodded and stood there, in the hallway, while I walked upstairs and shut the bedroom door. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark thinking about Lena, not what she looked like or where she worked. I didn't care about that. I thought about how easily he threw everything away for something temporary, how he looked me in the eye for months and lied without hesitation. And I thought about all the nights I'd stayed up late planning his birthday, cooking his favorite meals, listening to his complaints about work while he was fucking someone else between meetings. And then I thought about what I was going to do next. Because if he thought that conversation was the end, he was very, very wrong. The next morning, I didn't speak to him. I made breakfast, poured my coffee, and sat at the table like I always did, reading emails and going through work tasks while he moved around the kitchen like he was on eggshells. He asked if I needed anything, and I told him I was good. He kept trying, offering to make toast, refill my cup, or fix the faucet in the bathroom like suddenly being useful would fix anything. I let him try. I watched it all with a steady face and answered every attempt with the kind of polite dismissal you give a stranger. He noticed. He knew he was invisible now, and I could tell it made him nervous. That's what I wanted. The more anxious he got, the quieter I became. The quieter I became, the more desperate he acted. That was step 1. I called out sick from work that day and sat in the bedroom with a notebook. I didn't write out feelings or list memories like someone spiraling. I wrote names. Names of his coworkers, names of his friends, names of mutual acquaintances. I circled the ones who probably knew. I put stars next to the ones who might have helped cover for him. I made a list of every night he came home late in the last 3 months, then checked my phone photos to match what I was doing while he was screwing someone else. The contrast was sharp. I had thrown him a surprise party while he was texting her from the driveway, telling her she looked better in black. I sat through a dinner with his parents while he had her photos saved under a fake contact name. Once I had the data laid out, the story was clearer than anything he could have told me. I didn't need his version. I had facts. And now, I was ready to use them. That evening, he came home with flowers. Cheap ones from the grocery store wrapped in crinkled plastic, like that would even register. I let him hand them to me. I took them and placed them in the sink, not saying a word. I saw the confusion in his face, like he expected a reaction, a crack in my expression, maybe even a thank you. He didn't get one. I went back upstairs and started step 2. I texted his boss, a polite message under the guise of a personal update. I asked if he'd be willing to have coffee with me the following week. Nothing serious, just wanted to run something by him. The reply came within the hour, of course. Just let him know the time and place. That was the beginning of the end. The next few days were a blur of precision. I started by logging into the shared drive we used for finances, downloaded all the account records, and flagged every strange transaction. Hotel charges, gas receipts from parts of town we never went to, a payment to a florist I'd never received anything from. I printed them, stapled them neatly, and placed them in a folder. I also printed the phone records. The itemized bill showed everything: date, time, number, duration. His lover had called him 3 times on our anniversary. That one went on top of the stack. He noticed something was different when he came home Thursday night and saw I'd cleared out the guest room. The bed was made, but the closet was empty, drawers open and dusted. He stood at the door with that cautious voice people use when they know they've lost something but still pretend to ask why. Why did you clean this out? I need space, I said, brushing past him. I'm working on something. What kind of something? The kind you'll find out about later. His face changed, the way someone looks when they realize their control is gone and they have no idea where it went. He didn't ask again. He didn't like the tone I used, and I knew it. That was the goal. I started going out more. Dinners with friends, late walks, overnight trips with no explanations. I didn't tell him where I was going. I didn't offer details. I left my phone face down on the table when he was around, watched him glance at it when he thought I wasn't looking. He asked once, very casually, if I was seeing someone. I smiled. Do you want me to be? I asked. He didn't answer. The thing that shocked me most was how fast he crumbled when the balance shifted. The same man who had no problem lying to my face for half a year couldn't even last 5 days without spiraling when I did the same. I caught him one night staring at me from the hallway like he didn't know who I was anymore. I let him. He had no idea what I knew, no idea what I planned, and that aided him. He was afraid now, which meant I had finally taken back control. The night before I met with his boss, I left my laptop open on purpose. The folder with all the printed documents was next to it on the table, labeled with his name. He didn't touch it. He wouldn't dare. But he saw it, and that was enough. I didn't speak to him the entire evening. He kept trying to be warm, asking if I needed anything, if I was okay. I smiled each time and said, I'm great. That's what did it. The kindness. The calm. He didn't know what to do with that, and it scared him more than yelling ever could. We sat across from each other at the dinner table like we had hundreds of times, but this time the food was untouched, and I didn't even bother pretending to care. He was trying to start a conversation about his day, mumbling something about a meeting at work that went badly, but I didn't ask any follow-up questions. I just nodded and looked back down at my plate. He kept glancing at me like he was waiting for something. Maybe for me to cry again, or maybe for me to scream like I had that first night he admitted the truth. But I was past that, and it showed. I knew exactly what I was going to say to him, but I wanted to see what he'd try before I did. I know you're still angry, he said after a few minutes of silence, his voice low and almost rehearsed. I looked at him and didn't answer. Not yet. He kept going. I've been thinking about everything I did, and I'm not trying to make excuses, but I want you to know I regret it. I really do. Do you? I finally said, resting my chin on my hand. Yes, he said quickly, like the word had been sitting at the edge of his mouth all day waiting for permission to jump. Regret what, exactly? He stared at me for a second. The affair. Hurting you. Lying. And if I hadn't found the lipstick, would you have told me? He hesitated. Don't lie, I added, still calm. No, he admitted. I wouldn't have. I nodded. So you don't regret it. You regret getting caught. That's not fair. It's accurate. He rubbed his face and leaned back in the chair, frustration building, but not enough to say anything useful. That was always his problem. He got upset when things didn't go his way, but he never had a plan after that. I let the silence stretch out again. I wasn't in a rush. I could have sat at that table all night and just watched him sit in it, and I think he knew that. I want to fix this, he said, finally. I want to figure out a way to move past it. There's no moving past it, I replied. There's only going through it, and you're still trying to skip steps. What do you want from me? I want honesty. I want to know how many times you were with her. I want to know if you told her you loved her more than once. I want to know if you thought about leaving me. His face twisted like he wasn't ready for specifics. We were together a few times. I didn't count. And I only said that because she pushed me to. But you said it. Yes. I picked up my glass and took a sip. Did you ever think about ending things with me? He paused again. I could almost hear the calculations in his head, trying to find the answer that would do the least damage. I wasn't looking for comfort. I wanted the real one. Yes, he said. Once or twice. I smiled a little. That's the first true thing you've said tonight. I didn't mean it. But you thought it. I was confused. No. You were selfish. That shut him up. He didn't even argue. I let it sit there for a moment, then stood up and walked to the other side of the table, pulling out the folder I'd been keeping hidden since the day I started planning. I dropped it in front of him without saying anything. He looked down at it like it was a grenade, his fingers hovering just above the cover. What is this? He asked. Everything, I said. Receipts, messages, location history, phone records. Everything you thought you were hiding. He didn't touch it. Why would you do this? Because I wanted to see what the truth looked like on paper. And what do you want to do with it? That depends on what you say next. He looked at me, searching my face for a clue, maybe hoping I'd smile or cry or break, but I just stood there, watching him squirm. I don't want a divorce, he said. That's not your call anymore. I'll do anything, he said. Therapy, full transparency, you can check my phone, whatever you want. You said that before, right after you got caught, and still kept the card. He looked down again. I didn't know what I wanted then. And now, I want to fix us. You don't get to fix what you broke with duct tape and hope I don't notice the cracks. So that's it, he said. You're leaving. No, I said. I'm giving you one last chance to tell me everything. No spin. No edits. All of it. And then I'll decide. I already told you everything. Then we're done. He jumped up. Wait. There was one other time. I tilted my head. Go on. Before Lena. Just once. Years ago. Someone from work. It didn't mean anything. And you were never going to tell me. I thought it was over. I thought it wouldn't matter. But now it does. He nodded slowly. Yeah, now it does. I sat down. Okay. Now we're even. You had two things. I have two decisions. He looked confused. What does that mean? It means I'll let you know what I've decided soon. Until then, don't assume we're fine. He stood there, helpless, and I picked up my fork and started eating like nothing had happened. For the next 3 days, we spoke only when necessary. I kept everything practical, updates about the car, reminders about mail, questions about bills. He tried to bridge the gap with small talk and weak jokes that fell flat every time. He was desperate for a sign that things were softening, that the silence was just temporary, that I was working my way toward forgiveness. But I wasn't interested in repairing anything. I was organizing the final pieces of what needed to be said and done, and I wasn't in a rush. I wanted my words to land the way his betrayal had, not loud, not chaotic, just steady and undeniable. On Saturday morning, I asked him to meet me at the park down the street. I didn't want to have the conversation inside our house, where the walls had already absorbed too many lies. I sat on the bench near the walking path and waited. When he arrived, he looked unsure, like he didn't know if this was a date, a discussion, or the end. That told me he still didn't understand the weight of what he'd done, which made what I had to say even easier. I've made my decision, I said without waiting for him to sit. He blinked. You have? Yes. And I'm going to say everything once. I'm not repeating it. He nodded quickly and sat down. Okay. I'm listening. I don't believe anything you've told me for the last 6 months. I don't trust you. I don't respect you. And I don't think I ever will again. He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. I'm not finished. I've gone over every version of this situation. I asked myself if I could rebuild something with someone who looked me in the eye and lied repeatedly. I asked myself if you were worth starting over with. And the answer was always no. You're not. He looked away, jaw tight. So what are you saying? I'm saying this marriage is over. I'm filing for divorce. His eyes snapped back to mine. No, don't do that. It's already in motion. I contacted a lawyer. You'll get the papers this week. He shook his head like that would change the outcome. I can't believe you're doing this. You can't believe I'm doing this? I laughed once. You cheated on me twice, lied about both, and didn't come clean until I backed you into a corner. You thought I'd just forget? That we'd go back to cooking dinner and watching shows and pretending we were fine. I thought we could work through it, he said, voice rising. People do. Not me. I don't sweep things under the rug because it's more convenient than admitting the truth. You didn't love me enough to stay faithful. I don't love you enough to stay married. He stared at me like he was waiting for me to soften, like this was still part of a dramatic scene that ended in forgiveness. But there wasn't anything left in me that wanted that. I felt calm, almost bored, saying these things. That's how I knew I was done. Can we at least go to therapy? He asked. No. I'm not interested in repairing a connection that never meant enough to you to protect. I'm done. And the house. I'm not keeping it. I don't want it. We'll sell it. The money will be split. My lawyer will handle the details. He looked at the ground. What about everything else? There is no everything else. You get your things. I get mine. Anything left behind gets donated. Simple. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, trying to collect himself. You really don't feel anything? I felt everything weeks ago. Now I feel peace. You don't love me anymore? That version of me doesn't exist anymore. She loved someone who didn't exist either. He stayed quiet for a long time after that. I think he expected more of a fight, more drama, more emotion. But I had spent every ounce of my anger and grief in the days after I found out. This was something else. This was clarity. I guess I deserve this, he finally said. You do, I replied. He nodded slowly, then looked at me with something close to real sadness. I never thought I'd lose you. You didn't lose me, I said. You threw me away. He didn't say anything after that. I stood up, walked back toward the path, and left him sitting there on the bench, still hoping I'd turn around. The divorce went through quickly. I didn't drag it out, didn't ask for more than I needed, and didn't play games with what was fair. He tried, once or twice, to slow things down, sent me a long email about memories, about the trips we took, about the good years. I read it once, calmly, then deleted it without answering. He called me 3 times in the week after the papers were signed. I didn't pick up. I didn't block him, either. I wanted him to sit with the silence he'd earned, not escape it. By the time the house sold, I had already found a new place. Smaller, cleaner, more manageable. No old photos to hide, no drawers filled with junk that used to mean something. Just a space that was entirely mine, and quiet in a way that didn't hurt. Friends asked if I felt better. Not happier, just better. It was always a strange question, like they didn't know which version of me they were supposed to talk to, the wife who got cheated on, the woman who walked away, or the person starting over. The truth was, I didn't feel better. I felt normal. I woke up, made coffee, went to work, and stopped wondering where he was at night. That was enough. I didn't need revenge or closure or some big final scene. I just needed him gone. A few weeks after the move, I ran into someone who used to work with him. We weren't close, just the kind of friendly that happens when your lives overlap enough. She looked surprised to see me, asked how I was, then paused and said, I guess you've heard. I just nodded, even though I hadn't. She told me Lena had quit. Something about things getting uncomfortable at work, about rumors spreading. I didn't ask for more. I didn't care if she'd left the country or moved down the street. She wasn't the problem. He was. And I wasn't wasting energy on someone I never even met. He tried one last time a few days after that. Sent a handwritten letter. Said he respected my choice, that he understood now how much damage he'd done. Said he hoped I was okay, that he still thought about me. I sat on the couch with the letter in my hand for a while, not angry, just tired. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't emotional. It was just him trying to make himself feel better. I didn't write back. I didn't rip it up either. I slid it into a folder with the others, the receipts, the call logs, the photos, and closed the drawer. Not as a trophy, just to remember how quickly a life can unravel. What I learned wasn't some deep realization about human nature or how betrayal works. I didn't become a better person. I didn't transform into someone wiser. I just learned how to pay attention. To people, to silence, to my own instincts. I used to explain away discomfort like it was just part of life, something temporary, something I'd imagined. Now I don't. If something feels off, I ask why. If someone lies, I don't wait around for them to do it again. I don't give the benefit of the doubt when the truth is already standing in front of me. It's not about being cold. It's not about becoming untrusting. It's about not making excuses for people who know exactly what they're doing. He knew. He made those choices with full awareness. And once I accepted that, there was nothing left to figure out. I didn't know him kindness just because we shared a bed. I didn't know him understanding just because we used to laugh at the same things. He broke something, and I chose not to fix it. That's not cruel. That's just choosing myself over someone who didn't. People always want to know if I'll ever trust again, if I'll fall in love again, if I'm open to it. The answer is yes, but not in a way that means I'm waiting for it. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, that's fine too. I don't need someone to complete anything. I don't need anyone to make up for what he did. I'm not trying to replace a mistake with something better. I'm just trying to live in a way that doesn't involve looking over my shoulder. And right now, that's more than enough. Some days I still think about what I could have done differently. Not to save the marriage. I don't care about that. I mean in the early days, when I ignored the signs. When I let things slide because I didn't want to fight. I can't change that, and I don't beat myself up over it. But I remember it, so I don't do it again. That's the only lesson I took with me. Pay attention, and don't lie to yourself when the truth is right there. When I walked out of the house for the last time, I didn't cry. I didn't hesitate. I didn't even say goodbye to the rooms. I just locked the door and handed the keys to the realtor. That was it. No final thoughts, no looking back. Just steps forward. And for the first time in a long time, they felt like mine.